Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Kelsey Bixler, and I'm the Director of Growth Marketing for TouchPlan. And today, our webinar is going to focus on how to leverage technology to better manage your supply chain. While I give everybody a minute to hop on here, I do want to let you all know that you might hear TouchPlan referred to during this presentation, but we're not actually going to get into the platform itself. So if that's something that you're interested in, we've got a couple options for you. So one is a demo on demand, which is a video walkthrough of TouchPlan. We also host a live demo monthly. Our next one is coming up on March 2nd. And then finally, if you're interested in actually getting your hands on the platform, we have a free trial available as well. So I will send links to those in the chat, so be sure to check those out after the webinar. On the agenda for today, so we'll do brief introductions. We'll then get into our webinar discussion on how to better manage your supply chain. And then finally, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end. Without further ado, I would like to turn it over to our hosts today, Andrew Pyland and Jeff Houts. Andrew and Jeff, I will let y'all take it from here.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Kelsey. I'll just go ahead and start. Yeah, I'm Andrew Pyland, work at TouchPlan and Moog Systems, Inc. Got a background in military logistics, recently finished up a graduate degree in supply chain management, and I've been looking at construction supply chains for about the last year and a half, specifically with offsite modular, and really just trying to understand better how we manage construction supply chains better, because I think this is the next horizon of improvement within construction.
My turn, Andrew.
Yeah, go for it.
My name, excuse me. My name is Jeff Houts, and thanks to everybody for participating. This is year 34 for me in the supply chain and procurement space, the construction project, procurement and supply chain space. If I've learned anything in all that time, it's planning is the key to successful procurement and supply chain services for construction. We are not just about the acquisition of goods and services, and we're going to get into a lot of reasons why and how tools can help that planning component to become more of the forefront in your mind and make this and us a priority. So that's the kind of thing that I believe in, and I've been happy and blessed to be able to support TouchPlan and some work together in the last year or two. So happy to be back and helping this along, Andrew, and doing it with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Jeff. Yeah, so I'll start this. We've got a few topics that we're talking about now. And what we're seeing in industry, Jeff, has been, in the past, we've had some really efficient supply chains. And with that comes vulnerability and comes fragility. And so we've been responsive. Sorry, we weren't efficient. We were quite responsive and robust, where you could get just about anything you wanted on very short notice and in the condition you wanted it, just basically on a whim almost. But now we're not seeing as much of that anymore. I actually had a conversation with one of our enterprise customers yesterday, where they were talking that one job, they have a 4-year lead time for switchgear. which might indicate a super high demand volume, but what we've seen lately is that we've gone from a very robust kind of supply chain, and now we have to be much more efficient. So with that, Jeff, I mean, are you seeing the same thing? I mean, I think it ties a lot back to planning, but as far as getting around the new environment we're seeing, what are some ideas on that top bullet point you might have?
No, yeah, thanks for that. You know, supply chain has gotten the spotlight since COVID disrupted global logistics and supply, and rightfully so, I think, because some of the assumptions that we in projects have always made, because it wasn't a problem before, those assumptions become dangerous when supply chains are disrupted or new projects come along and a plan isn't really as complete or as set as it needs to be. So one of the points I wanted to bring to this, Andrew, is the concept of dangerous assumptions. The thing that wasn't a problem for you last time may just be now, and even during the course of the project, that might change. So getting ahead of the procurement to plan for lead time validation, alternate design and product, and all those things is something that I really wanted to stress. And it'll come up again, I'm sure, in the next few minutes, next little while. But that assumption and demand volatility, you may think you know the definition of that volatility, but I don't, and I just sort of do this for a living, so it has to be revalidated and replanned. Another side comment real quick, I should have introduced the company that you may not have heard of before, Triton IAG, that I am working with now. We're more of an owner's team contractor and consultant. So I wanted to stress another point. The contractors that many on this call may work for or with usually keep the need for that planning insulated from the owners that we work with. But the owner's surprise always happens when it's too late to do anything about it. So for both the contractor as well as the owner / developer, planning for supply chain is paramount, especially today.
Yeah, and basically being very firm in design too, I think. A design impact that might seem easy or has been easy in the past, could potentially have 6 months to a year impacts to the job as a whole, just by changing something on somewhat of a whim. So more people have to be involved in the decision-making process early, I think, is what we're seeing.
Such a cliche, but so true. I wanted to add a little color, if I could, to the third bullet on the screen about the schedule and who owns that schedule. You know, we, the buyer, the buying side of the transaction, love to feel as if we're in charge of everything, and whatever whim or change that happens can be absorbed easily by the contractor, by the supplier, by the OEM. That's not nearly as true as maybe it was back in some perfect world project that we once worked on. But really, it's not craft labor sometimes as much as it is the suppliers and their lead time that truly drive or own. I overuse that word own, but they own most of your schedule. You know, and you go backward from there, what's it going to take to design something and buy something? But it's the lead time, the time that the suppliers are certainly in charge of in the market, that dictates much of your overall schedule. And it's hard to admit that to ourselves in this industry, but I believe it to be true. So it's really just food for thought. Get you thinking a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I've heard the same thing as well, is that talking to a scheduler at a large data center company, what he told me was they're not so much concerned with contractor performance anymore, and because it generally takes the same amount of time to do things across project to project to project. There's some variance between your trade contractors, but really it's coming down to their bottleneck on their projects is the supply chain, when they can get things, specifically electrical components in the data center space. But going back to Last Planner and going another level with Last Planner, instead of just superintendent to trades, it almost needs to go up a level to where it's owner, contractor, and trades, and we're having sort of a Last Planner type exercise specifically around supply chain very early. But yeah, so I think in the last bullet point there, Jeff, so I think over the last year or so, people have been buying in bulk. An example I had, there's a project here in Fort Worth where I probably saw an entire project's worth of lumber for a large multifamily residential project, wood frame residential project, and it's been sitting on site for about 4 months. And I'm sure the project manager got a great price up front for that material. But I think what people are missing is that if you're not paying to store it, and if you're not paying to handle it once it's on the job site, or accounting for the cost of handling once it's on the job site, that sort of last 100-yard logistics, that last 200-yard logistics from where your laydown area to where it's going to its final resting place, is costing, because there's storage, material handling, and even warranty loss. I mean, if you're storing roofing material, on the job site. Good luck getting your roof or your manufacturer's warranty on your material if it's been out there in any sort of weather, especially like what we're having today in Fort Worth. So,
but buying everything at the beginning and flooding a job site sounds good to the field, just to have the assurance that they have all that stuff that's sitting out there and it's not a big unknown. But the inefficiencies caused by that, to your point, are huge. Another point to bring up: when I was working in support of TouchPlan, we interviewed in order to garner opinion as well as good advice from a lot of TouchPlan's customers. We interviewed many that basically said, I get it if you're building some new power plant on 500 acres and you got all the space in the world to deal with, but in the commercial space that I call it the GC space, that's where I'm coming from in energy. There isn't space to do that. It's physically not possible to do that. So just-in-time scheduling, the demand you talk about, is paramount. Because we've all seen in city downtowns, the trucks pull up to have their load offloaded by some tower crane, and they have enough space barely to even park for that half hour, much less have stuff spread out everywhere all nice and neat like sometimes you're able to do. So very, very important.
Exactly. Yeah, and those costs aren't accounted for. It probably looks really good on a balance sheet up front, but it looks really bad on your schedule on the back end. Yeah. So, and then the next thing, yeah, doing it better, enabling efficiency through better forecasting. And this is something I say is understanding demand signals, and no one understands a project's demand signals better than the superintendent on the job. And the superintendent's not just for the next week should understand demand signals, but should be planning 4, 6, and even 8 weeks out to really get as good of an understanding of what the job is going to need as they possibly can. And it all comes down to planning. It all comes down to thinking through the job and doing it in a collaborative way. Your trades get a vote, and heck, even your manufacturers get a vote in that. What have you seen a project where it's done really well?
It takes investment to do it really well. It takes investment and commitment in time and money and the right people. But when that planning and forecasting, to the point on the first bullet, when it's employed, which is sometimes it feels like it's very rare that level of planning and doing it better, like the slide says, is rare. But yeah, sure, the projects that have the guts, if that's the right word, to employ that non-traditional level of forecasting, and I'll make the point, reforecasting, revalidating during the course of a project, not just once at the beginning. Jobs can last years. Jobs can last months, but jobs can also last years. Heavens, a job that started in 2020 when COVID all began and lasted for a year or two or whatever the duration, saw so many cycles up and down both. You can't just think that estimate, the thing that got the job funded in the first place, is the Bible, the one baseline schedule that's never going to be changed. Oh yeah, so change to construction and the path of construction and all is inevitable. That's what we do. It's our industry. But another sort of dangerous assumption is when that change happens because of some unforeseen circumstance, you assume that change can be absorbed. And I think that's something I wanted to stress too, is maybe, maybe not. But you got to know the difference between maybe and maybe not, because material and equipment supply and even labor supply in the project's forecasting, it may or may not be able to be readily absorbed, no matter how much somebody's pounding on the desk or hollering at the person. That has to be taken into account through this reevaluation and knowing what is and isn't able to be changed without impact. That's important.
And it absolutely cannot be absorbed if the material is not on site. And you can typically absorb things by adding crews and perhaps even doing a bit of creative planning on the job, but that's provided the material is there. I was just talking to an electrical contractor yesterday, that they keep getting delivery dates pushed. They'll get an initial delivery date from the manufacturer, and it keeps moving further and further out to the right. And as he was explaining his problem, the question I asked him was, well, do you have historical lead time data from this particular supplier? I mean, he's building data centers. He has several data points here, historical data points. And the point I was making was, look, I know this is, it's not typical for trades to do this, but I mean, trades, you are the supply chain manager, and you really need to be able to forecast. So his main pain point was saying, I have to keep going to the owner and telling them that the date keeps moving and moving and moving. And my point was, okay, take your historical data, do a regression with it, do a Monte Carlo or something, do some basic forecasting practices, and be able to bring the date from the supplier to the owner and say, look, here's the date that I've been told with a lead time of X. However, the lead time that they're giving me right now is not even close to what we've seen in the past, and everything is trending longer. So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, I'm told this, but based on my data, it's actually going to be this. And I think that benefits a project, not just the project, but that relationship between the trade contractor, the general contractor, and the owner. We're actually doing our best due diligence to do some forecasting, because I'm not seeing anyone doing it right now.
Yeah, great point. Yet again, Andrew, there exists a sort of treasure trove of information that sometimes we're a little too proud to ask for, that we should just know this in our head because we're really experienced. But your suppliers out there are usually very willing to share market intelligence with their customers, potential customers. Many of them give it away for free, just for the asking, some of which actually, publish on the web, but on their own site or in other publications. So if you're looking for lead time trends, Google works magic. Your suppliers, your suppliers tend to also. And so, I'm guilty of it myself too. I should know this, or I'm in charge of all this great knowledge. Ask, and don't be so proud to ask. And your suppliers, if they own your schedule, they also own this treasure trove of market data to help you figure out what is and is not your problem. And usually they're more than happy to help you to understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's a big first step in this sort of transformational or organizational transformation, where we talk about enabling our own internal processes and being the best company that we can be, but we don't really become a next level contributor or adding another level of value until we start collaborating with our partners. And I think that's the first step. It's just sharing a little bit of data to add more clarity to the picture we're telling our mutual owner. Well, yeah, great. And I think that covered the top 3 bullets. I mean, there's certainly some last planner aspects to that. But Jeff, one thing that we had talked about in the past that I really liked is assess your lead times. So let's say we go through our initial design exercise, and we're designing around lead times, which I heard an architect say yesterday that they are actually making basis of designs around what has the shortest lead time for the building, and owners are accepting that. But they're going off an initial assumption and an initial understanding of their lead times. The point you made was, yes, okay, go forth and start the project with under that initial understanding, but validate that at some point again, and don't just forget about it and accept it as set in stone. What's your best practice for that? I mean, is it right at the beginning, do it, maybe a third of the way to the project, halfway? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, beginning, it has to be done at the beginning to even get the project, accepted or approved or funded or whatever term you want to use, so that everybody knows what even the financer, if there is one, knows what they're getting into and all. But really, especially because of the ups and the downs of supply chain market trends, you'd be best to plan for at least 2 in-process revalidations of anything, right? And anything's going maybe a little far, but I'll still say the word, anything that's not stock. anything that you estimated would have a lead time to it. And if you're doing that at least 2 times, say maybe, a third of the way through your design and construction schedule, not just your construction schedule, but the upfront too. And then again, maybe through the first little chunk, maybe quarter to third of your construction schedule to revalidate that, you will find surprises. And so the things that you banked on being your worst problem may still be your worst problem, but the duration might have changed even further. Or you'll find that you have a new worse problem. And it happens all the time. And so projects tend to do a disservice to themselves, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, that they choose not to spend the time and the effort in revalidation like that. And that's not just lead times, it's cost too. It's both things. It's cost and schedule. So the overuse by many companies of all kinds of historical data or an estimator's brain also become dangerous through all this ups and downs of cycles like we've been through. So that validation, again, to the suppliers and the contractors, should be done and go straight to the source to do that. I know that companies don't like to be over-exercised for budget bidding and all of that, but it's a part of the game, and they are the horse's mouth of what's real in the market, the suppliers, not necessarily the cost of scheduling arm of a company. So I encourage everybody to use that source, and like Nike, just do it and do it more often. Maybe than you're used to doing. I think you'll find some help by doing that.
Yeah, and it starts with just really emphasizing the importance of the procurement log and having an accurate procurement log with lead times for critical equipment. I think is really, if an owner is not demanding to see the procurement log or periodically, or at least a general contractor, lead project manager doing that, there might be something wrong. We have to constantly validate. I agree. Okay, yeah, I think that covers here how we do it better. But as far as technology goes, there are some platforms out there that really are tackling this construction supply chain problem. I'll always say TouchPlan first for supply chain management, because we are the tool by which your superintendents and your entire project team understands demand signals best. If you're not planning, if you're not going through and thinking through the job far out in advance and using an agile, common, collaborative platform to do that, you might be in some trouble. So that's, I think, us as demand planning platform or is a good start. There's a company, Catalyst TI. Jeff, I don't know if you've used them or not, but it's actually really, really neat platform. They're focusing on, I think, more in the data center space, but in data center modular type supply chain management, supply chain forecasting platform. I actually know one of the product managers over there. He was a former construction manager for a big data center program. I'm really excited about Catalyst DI and what they're going to be doing in the future. Because what my understanding is they are matching bills of materials with suppliers, and not so much suppliers with bills of materials, or something to that effect. They're creating a two-way flow to where a suppliers can effectively understand which bills of materials they can fill the best, and shortening the length of time it takes to procure and deliver material. SiteSense by IntelliWave, actually a partner of TouchPlan. We've been kind of working on this sort of skunkworks type integration. Their material management, job site, supply chain management. If an activity moves in TouchPlan, then SiteSense would know about it. That's sort of the concept we're working through to really put demand signals where they need to be. BitRip is another TouchPlan partner. Nick Dimitrick has sort of bootstrapped this thing into a really cool business. Imagine QR code and tracking material on your job, but instead of having to go print a bunch of labels in the trailer and then take them out and individually stick pre-programmed labels on to your material for tracking in your laydown or tracking in route from your supplier. You rip it off of a roll of duct tape, you slap it on the material, you scan it, and now you have a geolocation, and it's basically like WhatsApp on tape is how Nick describes it. So BitRep's really solving some last mile, last 100-yard logistics problems that I'm super excited about. And then Jobix by Hexagon, and a material readiness application. They were doing construction supply chain before people knew that was a thing. They've been around a while. But I just wanted to quickly give a shout out to some of our tech, to us as a supply chain solution, and some of our tech partners out there who we think are going to be solving problems for contractors and owners alike. But Jeff, are there any others I might have missed other than Microsoft Excel?
Yeah,
I think we need to be doing that as a supply chain platform.
This concept of material planning, which I said at the beginning, I know how to buy stuff. I've been, in this space really well, but it should be more about material planning before even the first thing gets bought. And so you can material plan in Excel. You can material plan with a pencil and paper.
Yeah.
But I wanted to stress for these examples and others, these tools help to make it much easy, more effective, and clear visually to the people that need to know.
Yeah.
The concept of planning for a demand around a path of construction is the oldest thing in the book, right? I mean, that's how the pyramids were built. It's all really the same, but you're going to have a million line item project on your hands. The data just gets out of control, and you could control it on some Mondo spreadsheet. But these kinds of tools, TouchPlan included, and others, make this so much more integrated end to end and easier to put your fingers on exactly what you need right then, instead of the horror of trying to find something in massive spreadsheets and through other vehicles. Another thing that I've touched in the last years has been the concept of advanced work packaging, another space in the construction industry that centers around construction, engineering, procurement work packages. And so whether material is to be or not to be a constraint to a work package's ability to get built, well, that also includes everything, the craft labor, the right craft labor, safety, quality, everything else needed to build that work package. And there's many, many tools. The first one that comes to mind, just because I know them, is O3, 0 and the number 3. Invite you to look them up. I love doing things like this or listening to things like this, and then getting on Google for a half hour. You learn so much about what's out there in this space and who's a competitor to whom. But O3 happens to be involved heavily in that space in work packaging. But all of these have so much value and take stuff out of Excel, like everybody still uses for things like this too. Integrations to the system in which you bought the stuff. It's all high tech these days, and it's all easy, and it's not as expensive nearly as what it used to be. And heck, anyway, I could go on and on. I like to think I'm sort of data minded, but I want to take advantage of what's out there. And
that's right.
I encourage everybody else to also.
If no one takes anything else away from this slide, I mean, the point is, if you're still doing things like you were doing them 10 years ago, as far as managing your construction supply chain, you're way behind the curve. Not to call anyone's baby ugly. I'm sure there's several projects that are running just fine on Excel, but if you're going to get really in some more complex projects with longer lead times, especially now with supply chain vulnerabilities, we're seeing it. There are things out there to solve your pain points. I think let's go to Q&A, Kelsey.
All right. I am back. Oh, well, are you all seeing the screen okay?
That was magic. It just popped up.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. So I do have a couple questions from the audience. If y'all have any questions for Andrew or Jeff, feel free to drop those in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen again. And let me get my deck pulled back up here. But while we do that, so my first question I've got here is, what kind of immediate impacts will businesses see when they incorporate the supply chain into production planning?
So less surprises and bad news early, I think is probably the biggest one. Because you don't want to hear that we have to push the schedule especially along the critical path, because we just didn't have the visibility on supply chain. We knew we were going to need this thing, but we didn't validate we didn't know exactly the day we were going to install it. We thought it was going to come much further down the project, but now, oh, by the way, we actually need it 3 months ahead of when we thought we were going to need it, and then now it's on critical path. So, I mean, I think it just goes back to fundamental planning practices and the importance of that, and using a platform that drives collaborative planning to unlock that and to do those things. But ultimately, it comes down to getting bad news as early as possible.
Absolutely. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, everybody wants to see money savings and time savings immediately. And I get it. We all are people. That's how our minds work. But by immediately implementing the supply chain planning in their work process, it's more of a deferred savings or deferred identification to me, because what you're getting immediately is a way to quantify a risk that before you didn't attempt to quantify and know. So it's that risk mitigation sort of framework or construct, whatever the right word is, that you're getting more immediately by having implemented this. And you say, oh gosh, I must have always had that problem and I just didn't know it. Or
Yeah.
I assumed, back to my assumptions for a third time, I assumed that wouldn't be a problem for me, but guess what? I've just acknowledged or identified for the first time through this something I need to mitigate, something I need to take into account that I didn't know before. That's the more immediate thing you'll see. And I think that leads later to time and money savings, or the bad thing that didn't happen. Right.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for that. So we had another one come in. So what role do you see AI playing in this industry? When do you think AI will be advanced enough to integrate into the supply chain? And Andrew, I'll kick it off to you again if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have no clue. I'm not even gonna try to sound smart, because I honestly I don't know anything about AI other than it's going to help me write essays and blog posts later. As soon as ChatGPT comes back online and has enough bandwidth to let guys like me use it, I have no clue. I mean, I think it would be super cool to if I had my plan built out in TouchPlan for the project, or for AI to look at the activity descriptions that I've laid out, and then to populate a procurement log by going in and understanding lead times and automatically doing the regression models I was talking about earlier, where they're taking historical data and telling me what a realistic lead time for the parts I'm going to need or components I'm going to need as a part of my work packages are going to be. That would be sweet. I have no clue how long that would be though.
Yeah, Jeff,
I don't know. Maybe.
Any thoughts on AI and where we might be at?
The A in AI makes me wonder what the future might be of its ability to help construction, as in artificial intelligence and machine learning and that. What I know to be underused is using the data we have in our hands to do something with it with analytics, right? So if we know through supply chain data that this is the lead time, this is the path we can support, and if that lead time for something were to change, what can be the possible effects of that? We know we can do that through analytics today, and using the data we have, price forecasting too, right? I mean, everything that you would need to plan a year down the road based on changes to price and lead time today is all just data manipulation. You can know whether you should project that you're going to have craft show up at your job site 6 months from now or not. And that has a money impact to project's profitability. you should be able to influence decisions like that using supply chain data that today is usually totally ignored. The concept of dark data is big in this space. Some friends of mine that work in that space call it that. It's data that you don't use. You have, but you simply don't use, but maybe once, maybe not once. So analytics, which I know this much about, I wish I had begun it, being interested in this, 20 years ago. But use the data that you have. Analytics too is not expensive. You don't need to go hire some huge, big four consultant to do data analytics these days. Get it nearly free on the cloud, and tools to do that. Power BI notwithstanding, there's a lot of other things out there that can do that. So, but I don't know much about artificial intelligence aspect of analytics, but I know that there's a ton of 3D model visualizations showing you what something's going to look like, including material availability projections. Physically looking at a room in a high rise, for example, what is this going to look like? If there's anything red, some red pane of glass or steel girder, that means it's not supposed to be there when you think you're going to build that space. And that's all visualization. That's just also the use of data. And that's commonplace, and it has been for years in this space. And it looks like it's magic and James Bond, but that's been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a good point. Even though we don't really know where AI will come at some point, there's a lot that we can do with technology right now. So I love that. So another question I've got here, how do you identify the primary reasons processes aren't flowing? And I'm gonna keep with my kicking it to Andrew first and see what you think.
And let me make sure I understand the question. How do you identify the primary reasons that processes aren't flowing? And I'm going to assume by flow, we're saying if you have free variance, right? That A is happening on time, B is happening on time, C is happening on time as we planned it. I think it comes down to just generally how we fight entropy on a daily basis. If I don't go into my kitchen for the next 7 days, there's gonna be a stack of dishes sitting there, and it's just gonna be a complete mess. So I think it's just like, I can combat that by doing the dishes every day. And same thing on a project. I check in on my project every single day, and I have guidestones, and I have really a single source of truth for what's happening on my project and what's supposed to be happening on my project. And that's why I go into touch plan and daily huddles and just say, all right, where are we at? What happened? What didn't happen? All right, very quickly, it takes you 10 to 15 minutes to do it right. But you fight entropy by being present and maintaining order on a very consistent basis.
I like that. Jeff, do you have thoughts on the process flowing and how to identify issues with it?
Yeah, I do have it for a couple minutes at least. And this is a shameful plug, but TouchPlan is a good example of this. So there's 2 ways you can look at planning and scheduling and collaborating on a project. There's the sort of agile project management way of approaching how you go about your planning, as in frequent, short, to the point, just like you just mentioned, Andrew, right? And you have a way or a platform that makes it easy to do that. And the concept of that being, it's frequent, it's common, it's just the way you do your project management as a whole. Well, the other way is the traditional sort of waterfall approach to the concept of project management is when things go wrong, you do some kind of a deep dive and figure out why it happened, but the problem's already past you. That's sort of the quality kind of approach is, well, let's go do a root cause analysis of why this went wrong. You're like, but dude, you've already been adversely affected by that. You're going to find out why, perhaps. Well, you will find out why, exactly why something transpired. So maybe, just maybe, it won't happen again. But I think that this approach, the agile way of approaching day to day, not this, start, stop, is a much better way of finding out more while you can do something about it. And that's what I would stress. And So, I'm the material management guy, so I'm going to endorse that too, because we need to be a part of that process through our data and through active hands-on participation, so that we're not this, again, dangerous assumption out on the side that we can just support whatever's getting planned for. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank y'all for that. Couple more here. So what are some actionable steps I can take today to get my supply chain management under control? And I'll kind of add on to that question. Let's say somebody's already in the midst of a project and things are kind of spiraling and you're already having issues. What are some steps they can take right now to kind of get that under control? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Planning, sort of that agile approach, really. If it's already out of control, if it's already, if you feel like the job is dragging you along, like she pulling the job along, it's going to take a bit of an effort, but you have to, maybe it's your work staying later, work more hours, whatever it is, just to get ahead. But you have to get to a place where very little can surprise you anymore. And I think that really comes with maybe even letting some things that are coming up as fires that you think are fires. I would say when you're in that position, I think most of the things you think are fires are actually false emergencies, and they could largely be ignored. But doing pretty much whatever it takes to get back out ahead of the job, and start with figuring out the things you can ignore, and not just having an emotional response to everything that's coming at you. Because I've certainly been in a place where I think on a job someone said, "Hey, one of the restrooms is out of toilet paper," and I jumped up out of my desk to run over, and as I was walking halfway over, I was like, "Wait a minute, what am I doing?" Yes, I know restrooms need to be clean, but I'm in such a firefighting mode right now that I'm letting myself be completely sidetracked by these very small details. Yeah, it needs to be fixed, but it doesn't need me. I don't need to jump up out of my chair to go fix this because I have much bigger fish to fry. So I think understanding the things that you can drop is a good way to get back out ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of getting out of that reactive state and getting out ahead with planning, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Jeff, thoughts on that as well?
Oh, sure. When projects get that way, traditionally, we, design, procurement, construction kind of firm, will throw more people at it in a very agitated way to try to force fixing. And that's painful. Kills us all. It's painful. We've all done it. Understand. Hopefully the people listening in have all been through that too. However, I'm going to advocate for involving your suppliers when it gets bad. And that supplier collaboration, something I've been involved with and spoken about in the past quite a bit, can also do wonders for you. Usually, and I said it this way a little while ago too, usually we're too proud to do that because we can fix it ourselves. But when we try to not involve suppliers, we end up spending a whole bunch of money that we needn't. We're going to go double buy something, go find some other faster solution. You panic and you give up and you say, well, I guess I just got to throw a bunch of more people and money at this problem. However, many, many times your suppliers, if you involve others or more or new ones, can find you solutions because they're good at it most of the time, not all the time. Example from last spring on a project that I was involved with. Back to the electrical equipment being a problem. I think that came up earlier. This was an electrical equipment problem, a doubling of the lead time we had already bought. So this is a promised delivery, signed on the dotted line. Not 2 weeks later, the supplier came back with a surprise doubling of the lead time. They said, well, we just can't support. The market's changed again and yada, yada. And so we, of course, after everybody freaked out, we sat down and said, so we need to get creative. So we got some more suppliers involved and basically said, work some magic in your heads and tell us what else is possible out there, because this simply won't work.
Yeah.
And so the concept of pitching warranted refurbished equipment for this type of equipment, which most on the team didn't think was even possible to even run by a client or get some kind of approval or deviation that you could buy something other than brand spanking new, which obviously makes me and everybody else nervous. We worked the idea until we basically saved a bunch of time and money buying warranted refurb, rebuild electrical equipment that ended up getting there in plenty of time for us and saved us money to boot. So how did that come to fruition? It wasn't us. It was all the supplier. And I won't name them here, but many suppliers will try to do that for you in the very same way. So supplier collaboration is key. Please try it out soon.
Yeah, and I agree to Jeff with that. I mentioned, what things can I drop? Because I think when you start getting behind a job, you kind of say, well, nope, I've got to take the whole thing on my shoulders, and this is me. I'm going to pull us out of it. Don't so much go internal with that. Is exactly what you're saying. Is start leveraging as many outside resources as you possibly can, up to and including suppliers, and allow people to be creative. Because I think with the right selection of people, the more brains in the room, the better. And yeah, I can't tell you how many times I wish I would have looked back and collaborated better with my suppliers, trade contractors, and heck, even their suppliers to boot, because my own brain didn't have the solution, even though I might have thought I did.
Perfect. So just a couple more here. I see if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to send them in. But one more. So how can you get buy-in from team members to change their current process? Andrew, you talked a little bit about if you're doing the same thing that you're doing 10 years ago, you're already behind the curve. So how do you get people on board who might be resistant to that?
Yeah, it starts with just a foundational and fundamental respect for people, I think. And specifically in construction, I mean, there's a very clear hierarchy. At least I understand, where it starts with the owner, it goes to the CM, then the GC, then the trades, and the vendors and suppliers after that. And if you're one level down on the hierarchy, it's on you to figure out how to meet a particular deadline, or how to essentially make your make purchase supplying happy. I think but with that, that can get abused a bit. I've seen where a general contractor will go to a trade and say, yep, hey, I bought this from you, ready to go. It's like, we never had a conversation before you bought this, man. We need to talk about this, and bring everybody, all the way down to suppliers included, and have a sort of a colleague to colleague understanding of the relationship first. And then from then on, I think whatever process that you're going about and practicing yourself and is working, people will see that and notice that success you're having and follow right along with you. It can't come from, it can't be something that's forced on anyone, especially from a vendor to supplier sort of relationship. It has to be colleague to colleague, and it has to be sort of a follow me approach by a list of specs and saying, hey, this is what we're doing.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Jeff, do you have any experience with kind of overcoming resistance to this process change?
Yeah, just a shorter color commentary on this one. Really, the advice I give is, and it's a cliche, but it's real. You have to have buy-in at the top, and the funding for whatever you're trying to do or whatever is going to come from that. So yes, that's a sort of a pansy answer, but that's number one. But number two is, I think maybe even more important, spend time and mental effort figuring out who your biggest opponent is. At times we have done that to try to pre-think that pushback has really paid off, because then you can get ahead of the problem a little bit and temper that problem and make it better, pre-align a little bit with who the naysayers are going to be. But I think that's really important, instead of just sort of again, maybe, I don't know why this is a theme today. Pride of ownership is, I'm going to be able to force this through. I'm going to stand this up because I can, and I'm good at this, and yada yada. Yeah, you've got to figure out who the yays and the nays are. I guess the third that I hadn't thought of until a second ago is goal setting and pictures worth 1,000 words. So the typical business response is, what's in it for me? What's the bottom line? How much is it going to cost? How much is it going to save? Quantifying that is sometimes difficult and sometimes not. It should be more than just about the money you save by finding additional suppliers and spending less money up front. We can do that too. That's been job number one forever, is spending as little as we need to. But quantifying, so hey, if we put a new role, an expediter, a material planner on this, it's going to cost X dollars per year. How are you going to make that money back off of that new effort, that new role, that new person? Goal set. One of the things we talk about in my space is we're one of the very few functions in the project world that can quite easily pay for itself. I mean, safety, HSE, whatever the acronym in the industry, is one too, obviously. Quality can too quantify the quality savings and work process stuff, but not just in PO spend, elimination, reduction, but in work process too. But through risk mitigation, sort of that framework, we can easily quantify all the stuff that if we stop it from happening, we're saving all this money. If we do away with the problem, we're saving all this money. So I would advise or urge everybody to give that some thought, and that's not as hard as you might think, but the goal set against the cost of a program or a person or a division. And I think you'll find it's not so hard to do, but that's a neat pitch to make to leadership is actually, it's not costing you anything. I'm actually going to save you. And think about that.
We love appealing to a good return on investment. Great. So I've got one last question, unless anybody else sends something in. But it looks like this kind of plays into resistance as well. So this person says, so you say it's going to drive efficiency. However, changing my work process is going to take time out of my day that I need to spend moving my project along. How does this value outweigh the time and energy it will take to change our process and get spun up on new technology? So kind of, again, playing into, honestly, this person's resistance too. But Andrew, how do you feel about that?
I mean, it goes back to the analogy of you want to cut a tree with a dull axe or a sharp axe. If you just keep hacking away, you're going to keep having a dull axe. But unless you take 30 minutes to sit down and sharpen your tool, you'll be very tired at the end of the day and not get a lot done, which is where I think in general, a lot of good project teams are at. They'll get through these projects with just sheer grit and determination. You're putting in 80 hours a week, and if they pull it over the line, they maybe get a week off at the end of the project, and then it's right back to the next one. I think being able to step back, assess your existing processes, and allow, so a lot of contractors are actually starting these lean organizations or process improvement organizations with some pretty sharp people who are coming in and acting as internal consultants and working with teams to improve processes. And the best ones require somewhat of a reset, but you see the benefits on the backside once you really made the time investment to go with a new process or to improve an existing workflow. So yeah, I'll stop by saying, if you want to cut down a tree with a dull axe or a sharp axe, if you want a sharp axe, you got to keep sharpening it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds not only inefficient, but kind of really unsustainable for the people who are on the job. Jeff, do you have any thoughts about that too?
Yeah, thanks. It makes me think back to the engagement with TouchPlan again, Andrew, Kelsey, when we were interviewing a lot of your customers and potential customers to get feedback. Another of the things we learned was the inefficiencies that many companies are okay with, and just how powerful that was to dive deeper into that. I think you get let me try to explain real quick. So say through not planning for supply chain interaction and using the data and all that stuff, you might put up with a level of inefficiency at the job site caused by unavailability of goods, double buying, rebuying, expediting charges, all of that. And you might be okay with, you know, X% of your project's cost being normal in inefficiency. Well, I challenge that because that may be a much higher number than it needs to be. So to the point of a dull or a sharp axe is just because it's change doesn't mean it's bad. And the extra effort you might put into standing up a program or a tool set might actually save you, not cost you. And you can quantify that. Don't be hesitant to at least try to make that pitch. Because I would say that high level of inefficiency you're okay with should be challenged. And if you reduce it by a quarter or a half or whatever, you're in like flame, man. You are so much better off having implemented a change that you didn't even know you needed to fix because you were okay with all that inefficiency. So that's just some feedback that we learned from some real life customers.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all. It looks like that are all the questions I have. Jeff and Andrew, if anybody has any more questions, where can they find you and reach out to you?
Call me 918-607-9058. Yeah, or find me on LinkedIn too.
Yeah,
yeah.
Jeff,
Everybody uses LinkedIn. Usually with things like this, I'll just refer, you know, to the name which you saw, Jeff Houtz, Houtz. There's a dentist somewhere in like Pennsylvania with the same name, but there's not too, and I don't know who that is, but there's not too many of us. But please reach out with a message or a LinkedIn request. I love talking shop about this stuff after the fact and seeing where the discussion goes. I don't know. This is all for nothing. Happy to just help the industry to understand this a little bit better. So reach out and we'll hook up and chat if you want to.
Perfect. Thank y'all. For everybody who attended, thank you so much for joining us. There will be a recording available at the end of the day. But until next time, thank you all. And thank you, Andrew and Jeff, for joining us.
Cheers. Thanks to everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Jeff. See you.
Bye. You're welcome.